Good day everyone, my name is John Barney Poldo and today I'll be tackling about population distribution, measuring of population and population growth problems. First is we tackle about population distribution. Population distribution refers to how most of people are disseminated in a region, area or country, or in simple words, where do most of people live. People live in different locations in around the world and not evenly distributed. And this happens depending on a variety of factors. These factors include natural resources, climate, work opportunities and security, and social services. There are three kinds of population distribution. First is dispersed distribution, a form of population distribution in a scattered pattern. For example, rural areas where agriculture are mostly the work of people, where these people occupies more land for their plants and crops, resulting in a scattered pattern and are living far away from each other. The second one is cluster distribution, a form of population distribution in a clustered pattern. For example, barangays in the Philippines where people are crowding in certain locations, forming clusters and groups. Factors that includes why population cluster pattern happens is religion, work, opportunities, same culture, and needs. The third is linear distribution, a form of population distribution in a linear pattern. For example, people who live close to the sea. This happens because of the factor resources, where people mostly work is fishing, where fish are resources from the sea, and which explains why people line up living from the edge of the sea or on the bay, making a linear pattern. Next topic is we tackle about measuring population. Measuring population is a form of action where people count the amount of people in a certain region, area, or country. Keep in mind that when government officials who conduct census that keep tracks of the number of population is not entirely accurate and is only a mere average or estimation. There are three methods for calculating population and these are arithmetic, physiological, and agricultural. First is arithmetic or arithmetic density is a form of measuring the population by the number of people per land area. For example, to find the arithmetic density for the US, you divide the amount of people, which is 300 million, by the amount of land, 3.7 million square miles, and if you calculate this, you'll get 80, on which there are 80 people per each square mile. Second is physiological or physiological density. Is a form of measuring the population by the number of people supported by a unit of arable land. For example, Singapore has the largest physiological density with over 5 million people having only 560 hectares of arable land. By contrast, Australia has approximately 25 million people having 46 million hectares of arable land. Third is agricultural or agricultural density. Is a form of measuring the population by number ratio of farmers to the amount of arable land. By this statement, it is obviously understandable. Next is we tackle about population growth problems. Population growth problems are problems and issues that affects the population. Growth of a certain country that it affects the system of the country. This includes the economy and the whole stability of the society. Examples of this are overpopulation and depopulation. In this part, I'll be giving examples of real actual problems of how these two population growth problems affect the people, the system, and the society they are in. One great example I can give regarding this problem is China's overpopulation problem in the late 1950s. After the industrialization of the majority of workforce of the government, it gave an economic growth of the country resulting to increase of population growth. But unfortunately, after the extreme economic scarcity due to the Chinese communist regime's poor economic policies, famine has come to the country. Because of this, parents in that time decided that having more children is the best solution to avoid starvation. Because many children equates many arms to help in chores and agriculture. And as decades passed by, their population skyrocketed high more than the government expected. So in 1980, the Chinese government imposed the law known as one-child policy to strictly restrict the flooding growth of the population. where parents are obligated to abide this law, where women were forcefully sterilized to avoid fertility and pregnancy. Due to this, many problems happened after this law was imposed. Having a female baby was considered a problem, and mothers were sadly forced to send their female babies off to the country to be adopted, to avoid sterilization or worse, death for the second ones. And as the year passed by, their fertility rate struck down so low that the ratio between death and birth were unbalanced, and death was more than birth, resulting to depopulation. Not also that, but it also caused an unbalanced ratio between male and female population ratio. This is one of the great examples how overpopulation can cause more branching problems if government implement poor economic policies and hasty forceful policies to counter the problem. Next example is about depopulation. One of the great examples of this is the depopulation problem of Japan. In the mid-1950s and 1960s after the World War II, Japan experienced an economic boom. Thanks to the Japanese extremely strong work ethic and culture that they miraculously adopted industrialization and technology production. Because of this, Japan's population grew high and resulted to economic growth. After this economic growth, Japanese in the workforce are expected to give their all in working. That overworking was praised as a noble work. Not until this overwork culture became a social problem and resulted to Japanese depopulation. That in early 2000, it resulted to Japan to experience economic stagnation and deflation. Because of this, extreme overworking problems that people began to work 12 hours a day, resulting to people not having enough time to invest in dating, resulting to lower birth rates. The overworking culture also caused wide-scale depression amongst the people, where people felt empty like their life was only meant for work, resulting to unproductivity or worse, suicide. Not only that, but younger generations are determined also to not get married and have a baby, which is a reflection of how their childhood was when their parents are not in home all the time and are always working, where they say, what's the use of making a family if you don't spend time with each other? Resulting to reduced fertility rate. There are still more problems that caused by this overwork culture, but it's too long for me to talk. If you want to learn more, you can go to the internet and research about this, and you'll see how this depopulation problem of Japan is so broad. So in conclusion, this is one of the examples of how depopulation affects society and how social problems can cause devastating damage to the population, economy, and the society. That is all for me today. This is John Leopoldo. Thank you.